Well, folks, it's time to belly up. I'm going to go a little bit controversial tonight with a question. Who gets to define marriage? I want you to think about it before jumping into an answer. And I ask another question. Where do you go to get the license? Oh, you're thinking, I'm talking in today's society. You're thinking one way, and I'm going to get around to it. But right now, in today's society, if you want to get married, where do you go to get the license?
Courthouse.
Thank you. Courthouse. Why do you go to the courthouse to get a marriage license?
So it's legal.
So it's legal, which means somebody's got to have their hands in it. Who's got to have their hands in it?
Government.
Thank you, the government. Okay, right now.
And they shouldn't have their hands in it. The only hands that should be in it are the people that are involved in the board.
Well, right now, and it's not just our government. Governments throughout history have been the ones that have defined marriage. You can go back into ancient Middle East, whether it be Israel, whether it be Egypt, whether it be all the different empires that have been through all of time, and the governments have defined marriage. One time, a man could marry as many women as he wanted to. Solomon had over 300 wives, over 700 concubines. A lot of his marriages were arranged marriages for peace treaties. But all throughout time, marriage has been defined by governments. C.S. Lewis said back in the 50s that we as Christians need to change the definition of marriage because secular society today owns it.
Amen.
And they do.
God should own it.
But here's something else to think about. We're getting worked up because gay marriage is coming in to our society. Folks, it's a given. It's going to happen. And we're getting all worked up about it. And the church is saying that marriage should be defined as one man and one woman. And I'm going to get to that in a minute, because that is right. But in so doing, what we've done, instead of taking up a righteous side, we've decided to take a defensive side. We're not defending marriage, we are defending what we feel like it should be. We want to impose ourselves on others in the way that we defend it. But when we do, we also got to take into consideration one thing. When we sit here and say marriage is between one man and one woman, marriage is a covenant. But what we do is we treat it as if it's something that comes with the get out of jail free card. Did you know in the church today that our divorce rate is higher than secular society? And we as the church have the audacity to stand in public and say, we have the right to define marriage. Oh, do we? We divorce more than they do outside of the church. Guess what? Shut up. If you're not going to do it right, shut up. We cannot point the finger of blame at people that are going to want to marry the way they want to whenever we can't even stick to the biblical plan of marriage. Biblical plan of marriage started with Adam and Eve in the garden. We're in Genesis chapter 2. Starting on verse 20. It said, Adam gave names to all the cattle, to the birds of the air, and to every beast of the field. But Adam, there was not found a helper compared to him. So the Lord God caused a deep sleep to fall on Adam, and he slept. And he took one of his ribs and closed up the flesh in its place. And then the rib which the Lord had taken from man, he made into a woman and brought her to man. And Adam said, now this is bone of my bone and flesh of my flesh. She shall be called woman, because she was taken out of man. Therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. Okay? And as a people of faith, that is what marriage is. That is what we believe to be marriage is. But today, we only do that as a matter of convenience. Instead of, as it says, till death do us part, we treat it as till inconvenience do us part. We hear the same scripture recited once again. This time it's out of the mouth of Jesus. The Pharisees also came to him, testing him, and saying to him, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife and for just any reason? You see, by this time, to get a divorce, all a man had to do was write out a certificate of divorce and give it to the woman, and she was thrown away. There was nothing to it. Pretty much like it is today. I think the cost cost us a little bit more than what it did back then, but Jesus answers them. And he said to them, have you not read that he who made them at the beginning made them male and female, and said, for this reason a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. So then they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no man separate. You see, I think that we do need to redefine marriage. Marriage is a holy covenant. Okay? That's what the church is offering. A holy covenant. Whenever we stand before a preacher, and we stand before our family, and we stand before God, we are making a holy covenant. That is not what you're getting when you go down to the Justice of the Peace Office, get your little piece of paper that somebody's going to sign off on. Whenever you get that, and you come before God, and you're a believer, and you take those vows, you are not only making a covenant in front of people, you are making a covenant with God that you are going to be joined and the two become one. It's holy matrimony. It doesn't mean that when things don't go your way, that you can just get an out. It doesn't mean that you float a trial balloon, and if it doesn't fly, so what? It doesn't mean that we have the right to stand before public and say, it's our way. We define it, whenever we can't even live up to what we define. The Western Church, the church in America, has shown by its example that it no longer views marriage as a holy covenant. You see, it doesn't matter what society does. It doesn't matter if we pick up signs and go protest in front of the State House and get on all the news. It doesn't matter. What matters is whenever we start taking our responsibility to our faith and to our covenant and living it in front of people's lives so they can see what a holy covenant is supposed to be. The moment that we can do that, and we can show society what a holy covenant is, then they will see the difference between getting a piece of paper from the justice of the peace and standing before God and making a covenant. Who should define marriage? God already has. Does that mean that whenever gay marriage comes into society that we go down and we beat people over the head with the Bible? No, it doesn't. You will never win a soul to Christ by condemning them.
Amen.
You see, when the woman that was caught in the very act of adultery was brought to Jesus and thrown at His feet, if she was caught in the very act of adultery, they brought her to humiliate her. That means if she was caught in the very act, they brought her naked into the streets of Jerusalem and they threw her at His feet. She was exposed. There was nothing between her and her God that was a secret. When Jesus and her were the only ones left there, it wasn't a question of her guilt. She was already guilty. There was no question. When Jesus stood up and asked her where those that condemned her were, she said there was no one. And He says, neither do I. Go and sin no more. That's the key that we always leave out, the go and sin no more part. He had already forgiven her. He had already showed compassion on her. And He had already lifted her back up. If He had condemned her, her lifestyle would have never changed. So if we beat people over the head with the Bible because we say, this is what defines marriage. Yes, this is what defines the holy covenant between a man and a woman that God created. That holy covenant is the purpose that God had for one man and one woman. But whenever you talk to somebody that does not understand it and does not believe it, you are not going to pound it into their head. They will not accept it. So let it come. We aren't going to be able to do much about it at this point in time anyway. But what we can do is through our actions. We can example what a true marriage is, what a true wedding is, and what a real holy covenant is. And if you're in the church and you treat marriage as something that you, whenever you get tired of it, you can take it, wad it up, and throw it in the trash can, do not open your mouth and tell somebody else what a marriage is supposed to be, because you don't have the right to say. People are looking for something that is real, and when they see it, they will grab onto it with both hands. And they're looking for it. And they're looking anywhere and everywhere that they can. And right now, Satan is throwing everything out there for them to grab onto, and they're grabbing. And the biggest reason that they're doing it is because we have not given them something they can hold on to. How many people do we know that will tell you, yeah, I used to go to church, but I don't no more? We've all heard, our church is all full of hypocrites. Well, guess what? So is a grocery store. So is a job place. So is Walmart. You go to those places. The one place that hypocrites need to go is church. So do liars and thieves and adulterers. Where else are they going to find salvation? And if we're not showing it, shame on us. We don't have a right to stand in front of society and tell them they're doing it wrong when we're doing the exact same thing. In the biker world, we call them phonies. And we are. At some point in time, we need to do a checkup from the neck up. And not only when it comes to marriage, but every part of life. We will never make an impact on somebody by using words. But we will sure enough do it by living a life. So as these things, these ills that are coming into society, and they're going to come even more so at a greater rate. We can sit there and try and buck the system. It's not going to work. It's got to happen. In order for Christ to come back, these things are going to happen. But in order for us to be able to live the life exampled by Christ, these things also have to happen. There has to be a contrast between what Satan offers and what Christ offers. And it has to be so drastic. It has to be so different that it shines so brightly that others can see it. Jesus said that our works are supposed to all be done before men, and they're supposed to see our good works and glorify our Father in heaven. Not us, but our Father in heaven. And we don't do it by a protest sign. We don't do it by yelling and screaming. We don't do it trying to be like the other side. We do it by contrast, offering something so totally different that it makes us stand out. And it makes us stand out for good. Marriage is just one of the things that society has got the definition for and changing the definition for. There's much more that's on the horizon that's coming. And we have to be ready for it. We have to be the salt. Jesus said that if salt loses its saltiness, how can it be resalted? He says it's good for nothing except to be thrown out to the streets. But salt is not only a flavoring, it is a preservative. And we're supposed to be the salt of the earth. We're supposed to preserve the gospel of Jesus Christ. And we're supposed to share it in such a way that it brings flavor to the world. People want flavor. People want something different. They want a contrast. They want something worth hanging on to. We've got to offer it. We've got to be it. And we've only got two choices. The first one is either shut up, and there's plenty of us out there that need to do just that. Or we can act. We can be. And we can shine. And that's what's going to get people's attention. That's what's going to change the battle at the end of the day. Satan to get his, but in order for those that are in the Lamb's Book of Life, in order for them to be redeemed, they're going to have to see it. And they're going to need to see it in us. So when you see these things happening, know they're supposed to. But understand, the things like marriage, what's in this book, it means it to us. It doesn't mean it to those outside. It's special to us because they don't understand. How can they? To them, this is nothing but foolishness. But to us, it has meaning. It has flavor. And it preserves. As we preserve our marriages, then we show something different to the world. We show the true definition. And that's what we need to be. We need to be the ones to show it.